we're gonna get started right away. We have a lot to cover and only just like very little time. So if you didn't hear me before, just locate the chat box. We will be sharing links, important information. Send your questions. We will maybe have some time at the end for some Q&A. Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, which one is your organization. Drop in a LinkedIn, drop in a link. Just like use your time, this time to connect. So you're here because you want to hear more about the mental cost of being a boss. And my name is Anya Aleman, Innovation Director at Ascender. Ascender, it's Pittsburgh's community for entrepreneurs. We offer mentoring, expert coaching, educational programs such as this one. Every month we have a particular theme where we coordinate and organize events around it, and also a series of templates, articles, and resources for you to continue learning on that theme. So if you haven't already checked our programs page, I highly encourage you to do that. We also offer a co-working space located near Bakery Square. You can check out more about our memberships in our website. So also, if you haven't checked out our website, take 1 minute to just look around to see all of the things that we have to offer, including, educational, the physical space, and any other resources. I highly encourage you to sign up to our newsletter if you haven't already done so. Just I wanted to give a couple of announcements before we get started. So next week we have Real Talk with Founders, and this is going to be working towards balance. I am excited to have 2 founders that are going to come in. The way Real Talk works is you send your questions in advance, and then the founders come in for an hour. They discuss and answer all of the questions in a candid way. We really encourage them to be honest, to be bold, and to really get to answer your questions in their most honest self. So it will be a really great event. We will have Lee Solomon Pugliano, founder of Straightforward Consulting, and Alex Bernstein, co-founder of Ascend Gym Climbing. And they're gonna be talking about how do they tackle work-life balance and just like, being a founder and tackling just everything that comes your way. So make sure that you sign up for that event now. And also to check out our website, as I mentioned earlier too. So as I said, I am very excited to and honored to have our guest today, Sharise Nance. She is joining our virtual Ascender space. She's a licensed clinical social worker, certified clinical trauma professional, compassion fatigue specialist, adjunct professor, award-winning entrepreneur, and many, many more things. She has over 20 years of experience assisting individuals, couples, families, see beyond energy depletion, hopelessness, panic, guilt, and then the feeling overwhelmed. So we have a lot to learn from Sharise, and I really want to pass the mic to her because I would love to learn a little bit more about you and your background, and then you can take it from there, Sharise, and tell us about what we will be discussing and learning about.
Yeah. Thank you, Anya. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And thank you to you, Ben and Ascender, for trusting me and having me here to talk about one of my favorite things to talk about is burnout and compassion fatigue. It's not my favorite thing to feel, but I just love talking about this and helping my colleagues with this. So before we get started, I see some familiar faces on here. Some people that I don't know, hope to get to know you. But if you feel comfortable, just go ahead and put into the chat the reason why you started your business, or maybe you're not a business owner, but the reason why you decided to take that promotion in the company that you're currently working for. So just thinking about the reason why, because that's, as we'll kind of talk about today, you'll discover that that's usually at the core of why many of us get burned out and find ourselves burned out repeatedly, because it's something that is just not a one-time thing. It's just not a one episode. It can happen repeatedly. And I'm not exempt. Even though I talk about it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't still happen to me, because it does. All right. So, and I'm sure we can all relate to experiencing burnout, especially as we're in the middle of this, what may seem like a never-ending pandemic. We get overwhelmed by the challenges and just the busyness of working, running a business, helping other people, taking care of our families. And if you're like most leaders, I know you've probably wrestled with the imposter syndrome of just wondering, like, am I good enough? Am I a fraud? Am I, successful at running this business? Am I leading people in the right way? Trying to do it all, just having that fear of delegating. Oh, I'll do it, because if I want it done right, I have to do it. And that's a precursor to burnout. And just making those unpopular and tough decisions that we have to make as leaders for our organizations. And we're doing this all while trying to stay positive and motivated, especially during this global pandemic. And these challenges can just create a perfect storm for factors that contribute to burnout. And that really is the mental cost of being the boss. We know that many people think being a boss or an entrepreneur or a CEO, it just sounds, and maybe it even looks sexy and seductive to a lot of people. But for those of us who are doing the work, we know that it's not. While there are many rewards to it, and it's a great thing, there are many, many challenges, and there are days that you question, why am I doing this? That's why I asked you all to just go ahead and put in that chat so you can reflect on the reason why I got started, because sometimes that's what we need to keep ourselves going. So just a few things to keep in mind as we go through our talk together. I'll definitely leave some time at the end for question and answer. There will be a little bit of interaction, but an hour goes really, really fast, and just want to make sure that we're able to get through all of the material. But, this is not a therapeutic intervention. I put that at the beginning of most of my presentations because I'm a therapist, but this is not a therapeutic intervention. This is educational, this is informational. We'll talk about strategies, but we're not doing therapy here. And just expect non-closure. It's an hour presentation, so we might not walk away with all the answers, and that's okay. Sometimes it's just about planting seeds and getting some new information. And expect discomfort. There might be some things that you discover, you have some aha moments, or maybe some things I say you don't agree with. That's okay. Or it may challenge, your belief system, and that's okay too. It's an opportunity. It's how we learn. It's how we grow. And just most importantly, relax and breathe. We're always in this type of posture as leaders. We carry it all, we do it all, and we're just always on a go. And many of us are just anxiety ridden. So just try to find a way to release your tongue, relax your shoulders, flatten your feet, and just breathe. Allow yourself to breathe and just be open to the information. All right. And just what I'm hoping that you'll get out of today's talk, just to sum it up, and what one of my mentors used to say, seven words or less. Just walking away with a better understanding of burnout, what contributes to it, some of the signs and symptoms, because many of us may be going through a phase of burnout and not even recognize it because we're so busy. And some of these signs and symptoms may seem that they're just normal. It's just something I've been dealing with for the past year or so. Doesn't mean that it's normal. It can mean that you're actually experiencing some burnout. So we don't want to ignore those signs. And then just find a way to learn some new strategies and possibly implement something either in your work, your business, or in your life that's going to allow you to build an immunity and reduce some of those symptoms. Okay. So our first activity I'd like you to do is, if you're comfortable, feel free to put it in the chat. If not, just write it down on a piece of paper, preferably a piece of paper. If you don't have a piece of paper, you can put it in your phone, I guess. And just really think about, how full is your well right now? Many of us are often operating from an empty well, but we will try to give from this empty well. It's almost like trying to drive a car on empty. That light is on and you're like, I can make it. I know I can guesstimate the mileage from my house to the store. I can make it and I'll get gas later. And it's the same thing that we do with our nervous systems. So just think about, many times throughout the day, we go through energy dips. So think about where you are right now in a present moment without any judgment. How full is your well? Are you at a place of abundance and overflowing? That's great. Fairly full, functional, empty. No matter where you are, it's okay. There's no judgment. It's just about being aware and recognizing and just being honest with yourself about where you are right now, and recognizing that and honoring it, because that's the first way for us to recognize if we're on that path to burnout, is to really bring awareness to how full our well is right now. Okay. So hold that number in mind, and I'm just going to take a peek. I want to see where everybody is. I have some twos. Okay. Been there actually this week. Full transparency. Many gaps available to help mitigate. Okay. Thank you all for participating. I see some sevens. All right. So hold that number and we'll see where you are at the end of our time together today. Okay. So a body awareness activity. So this is a brief body scan. It's just a way for us to bring awareness to our body, just to scan for any signs of arousal, tension, stress, because this stress starts in the body. Many times we ignore the signs, but this is a way for us to be more in tuned and bring awareness to yourselves, to your bodies. So what I'd like for you to do is just preferably sitting and not laying down. If you're not already, just go ahead wherever you're sitting and just find a comfortable position, placing your feet flat on the ground. You can place your hands in your lap or on the chairs of your seat. Rest them wherever it feels comfortable. Straightening your posture. And if it feels safe for you, you can gently close your eyes. If that's not safe, you can keep them opened with a softened gaze and just breathe. Just noticing the rhythm of your breath. How is your breathing? Is it deep? Is it shallow? Is it smooth? Or is it rigid? You're just noticing. And now we're bringing awareness to the temperature on your skin. Is it warm? Is it dry? Is it cool? Or is it moist? Just noticing the temperature on your skin without any judgment. Now we're going to bring awareness to your body with a body scan. And just notice any areas of tension. Do you notice a difference between your lower body and upper body? Your right side or your left side? What do you notice? And now we're bringing awareness to your heart. You can place your hand on your heart. That feels safe. And just notice the rhythm of your heartbeat. Is it beating fast or slow? Or is this the normal rhythm of the heartbeat? Just noticing. And now we're going to bring awareness to your face. How does your face feel? bringing awareness to your jaws. Are they clenched? Or are they relaxed? How about the position of your mouth, your lips, your nose, your eyes, your eyebrows? Are they raised or are they relaxed? Just noticing. Now bringing full awareness to your entire body from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet without any judgment. When you're ready, gently open your eyes and bring your awareness back to your body and the room around you. Hope everybody's still awake. And if you're comfortable, feel free to go ahead and put in the chat what you noticed. Did you notice any new areas of arousal or tension? Any common areas? Any areas where you felt a little bit more relaxed? What did you notice? And again, this body awareness activity is a brief body scan. It's just a way for you to scan your body for areas of arousal. It's something that I use all the time. I use it with a lot of the clients that I work with. And this is a way for you to just scan for signs of arousal so you're aware of stress, because the body really does keep score. And stress often starts in our body. And we're so busy. We're entrepreneurs. We got things to do. We're running businesses. We're leading people. We're raising families. We ignore those signs. So you'll hear me say that multiple times throughout the day. Don't ignore these signs. Just make sure that we're bringing awareness and paying attention to these signs. All right. So a lot of tension in the shoulders. That's very, very common because we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders, right? Headaches, very common. And we'll talk about that in a bit. So you guys are great. Thank you for participating. All right. So what is burnout? I'm sure you know what burnout is, but just that formal definition with the physical, emotional, and mental stress that's triggered by prolonged or repeated stress. So it's another one of those things that happens over time. It's almost like an abscess where you get that mouth pain, that tooth pain. It's probably the most annoying. It starts out, it's not real painful. It's just enough to just give you a hard time. And as time goes on, it's like throbbing, like the side of your face is hurting. Then you got a headache, your whole face is hurting, your whole body is hurting. It feels like it has a heartbeat of its own. That's exactly what happens with burnout. It's like a trajectory. And we'll talk about those phases in a minute. And it can cause people to lose meaning, not only in work, but in life. And this may be resonating with you, and that's okay. It's just a way for us. This is a safe space for us to bring more awareness to what you may be actually feeling, putting some words to it. And again, none of us are exempt. And I'm just so thankful to that we're bringing more awareness to this affecting entrepreneurs, community leaders, CEOs, supervisors, managers, just because of everything that we are coping with on a day-to-day basis. And that's just the formal definition of burnout. So let's talk about some reasons. Many reasons, but just in doing more research about burnout and just from my observations and my own experiences, these seem to be some of the more common reasons for burnout. And feel free if you can think of some more or your own experiences, if you want to put that in a chat, because I know for me, when I'm in workshops, like if I'm constantly writing or doodling, that helps me. So you can feel free to do that if that's helpful for you. But one of the major reasons for burnout is that immense deadline pressure. As leaders, we're constantly under pressure. Something's always due. There's always, the next thing to accomplish, the next person to hire, the next thing to do for your business, the next event to lead, the next event to make sure that you attend because your presence is needed because of the respect that you have from your peers, and the pressure to just perform, all the time. And some of us just appear to do it so well and wear it so well, and we put on this mask in public, but once we get behind closed doors and we're alone, that feeling of emptiness can begin to sink in from that immense deadline pressure, the lack of support. I know firsthand, entrepreneurship can feel like a lonely place. Running a business, even though you have many people who love you around you, the support of family and friends is one of those things that if you don't have a lot of people in your circle who are doing it, people truly don't understand what comes along with it. It's so it could just feel very isolated and like a lonely place. And it's really hard to talk to anyone about what you're experiencing. And then the lack of boundaries. Entrepreneurs are givers, leaders are givers, CEOs are givers. You're in this position of leadership because you're a giving person. You see a need, and what do? You meet it, or you're going to look for a way to get it met. You're going to look for a way to fulfill needs, to make sure things are moving. So these lack of boundaries happen a lot. You have a hard time saying no to other people. And sometimes you just can't protect yourself from yourself because you're just doing. You're constantly doing for, and sometimes you can violate your own boundaries that you said you're going to set for yourself. And then the lack of processes and systems in place. Just speaking from experience, I have a private mental health counseling practice with my partner, Tess. We'll be celebrating 8 years actually in a couple of weeks. And I just remember where we came from and where we are now. We had absolutely no processes and systems in place. We're therapists, but we were just running around, like just felt like we were all over the place, because at one point we were still both working full-time jobs and trying to run a business along with our personal lives. But once we got to a place where we were able to transition into doing it full-time, we were able to really commit to putting those processes and systems in place. And we're going to talk about what that looks like, because when you don't have those processes and systems, and this could look like as simple as when you decide to respond to emails. I have a colleague who only responds to emails Monday through Friday between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. Other than that, he's not responding to emails. That's a process. That's a system. How you are going to get new customers or clients, how you're going to schedule people. Those are processes and systems, and you want to make sure that those are written down. When we don't have those and things are just like all over the place, there's no rhythm, there's no organization, that is a perfect storm for burnout. And it's so common. I'm not picking on anybody, but it's just very common for us as leaders, because many of us are everything. We're running the business. We are the technician. So we're actually doing the business. For those in private practice, you're running a business, you're the counselor, you're answering the phone, you're the scheduler. Maybe you're doing accounting work. And I know as a therapist, I'm not good at that at all. You might be taking out the trash, washing the dishes, like you're just doing everything. You don't have time to put those in place. We'll talk about that in a few too. And then the I'll do it syndrome. You just want to do it all. And when you start in a business, it's very exciting. You're just excited. You have all this energy, as you should be, because it's an amazing thing. You get that promotion. You're excited. It's an accomplishment. So those lack of boundaries, you're just trying to, you pretty much bite off more than you can chew. And you don't think that anybody can do it like you can. And guess what? You're absolutely right. Especially for the people who are running businesses. It's your baby. Nobody's going to love it like you. Nobody's going to run it like you. And sometimes, not sometimes, we do have to find a way to come to a place of acceptance with that. That's yours. Nobody is going to love it or run it like you do. However, we could talk about ways that you can outsource so that you're not doing everything. You can do anything in the world. You just can't do everything, or you could try, but you will find yourself burned out. All right. So those are reasons. And let's talk about different types of burnout. So these are the three major types. I'm sure there are many more, but these are the three major types that really stood out when it comes to bosses, entrepreneurs, leaders, managers, supervisors, what have you. Overloaded. And when I think of overloaded, I'm thinking about, the saying, I'm booked and I'm busy, and that's great. But are we overbooking and are we overcommitting? Are we saying yes to things that we know we have no business saying yes to because we just have no room? We don't have the emotional capacity or the physical capacity. And being overloaded, it just happens when you just work harder and harder and you're just in that frantic state of success, almost like neurotic. It's almost like you're running from something. You just feel like if I work harder and harder at this and I do more and I do more, I'm going to get to a place where everything is going to be fine. And you do this at the sacrifice of your own well-being, your own physical well-being, your own mental well-being, and your own emotional well-being. Now, I don't want you to take away that I am saying, don't work hard, because obviously we know that there is hard work that's included in being an entrepreneur and being a leader, but it's about finding that balance and recognizing that's what that body awareness activity is so good for. Am I finding myself in a place where I am just overloaded and I'm on this just like frantic pursuit of success where it's making me sick? I'm overloaded and I'm overwhelmed. So that's overloaded. And then under challenged, maybe you're at a place in your business where you're feeling underappreciated and you're just bored. This is something that often happens when people get to a place of severe or chronic burnout, where they are in autopilot or they are in that zombie mode where they're just not connected with it anymore. Doesn't really have more meaning anymore, doesn't connect with your purpose. You've lost the passion. That fire doesn't burn within you when you talk about your business or you talk about helping people. And that's what happens when you're under challenged. And then neglect. This can happen when you're just that imposter syndrome starts to settle in, where you may feel incompetent, you're feeling helpless, and you begin to just doubt your skills, talents, and accomplishments. Do I have a real business? Is this business really profitable? Am I helping people? Should I be a lot further along? How come I've been running this business for 10 years, but yet not really as profitable as I think I should be? And at this point, you begin to neglect the business. You begin to neglect yourself because maybe you feel that you are pouring more into the business than you are getting out of it, or you're pouring more into people than you are getting out of them. So those are just some common types of burnout that happens with leaders and entrepreneurs. So what are some signs and symptoms? You're running on empty. Keep in mind that well activity that we did earlier. So there are various signs and symptoms, and I just want you to keep in mind that metaphor that I used earlier about that abscess. It's something that it does not happen overnight. It's a gradual process. And there are physical, emotional, and behavioral symptoms. Some of the more common ones, like the exhaustion, where you're just tired all the time, and an apathy, where you are just not excited, you don't feel fulfilled, you just don't have the capacity for anything, rarely even a business. The headaches, the body pain, the change in body temperature, you're having a hard time concentrating and being in a moment. When you're in appointments, you're always thinking about everything that has to get done, your laundry list. You just really can't focus. There are marked changes in your appetite and sleep. You're either overeating or undereating, increased irritability. You just don't want to be bothered with anybody once you finished your day. You're isolating yourself from activities. Little typo there, we forgot the T. And then reduced performance. Your productivity, you're just doing just enough. You just don't have it within you to do anything more, where you're just kind of cruising. And many of you may be thinking like, well, it sounds a lot like depression. How do I know that I'm not depressed and or I'm burned out? You're absolutely right. The best way to know is if you're experiencing any symptoms, especially physical symptoms, we want to start by going to a doctor and getting a medical rule out, because we always want to rule out those medical symptoms first before we diagnose with a mental health diagnosis. But once we get that rule out, then we can seek care from a mental health professional, or sometimes, a medical professional to maybe we are looking at something like depression or something else. And the difference between depression and burnout, they look so much alike, is that depression is a mental health diagnosis. It's in a diagnostical statistics manual, and sometimes people take medication for it. Burnout is not something that you're taking medication for. It's really about reorganizing your lifestyle and implementing some of the self-care strategies that we're going to talk about in a few. So those are the major differences. And also with burnout, the World Health Organization actually recognizes burnout as a condition. I've had many people leave work for burnout. Family Medical Leave Act recognizes it. I'm not trying to encourage people to do this, but if it's something, that's just information for you. So those are the differences between a mental health diagnosis and burnout. So let's talk about some of these stages. And just as we're going through these stages, maybe this resonates with you. Maybe you're thinking of some of your colleagues or people that you love. It's okay, but it's about bringing awareness to where we are in a moment before we can begin to do something about it. So this first phase, we talked about this a little bit. This is that honeymoon phase. I refer to this often as that I'll do it phase, because this is where you usually have the most energy. You're excited. You just have so much momentum where you just want to do more and more and more and more. You have very loose boundaries. It's almost like, it reminds me of people who go on a new like fitness regimen where they are just, I'm working out every day. I'm going to severely restrict my calories. And it's like, you might be able to keep that up for a week or two, but is that sustainable in the long haul? So in this honeymoon phase, this is where people are dangerous and where we really want to try to set some realistic boundaries around, time, emotional boundaries, things along those lines. But it can be a beautiful, beautiful thing if you're able to set some boundaries, because we all love the honeymoon phase. And then we have the onset of stress. So that honeymoon phase, you're having a hard time setting boundaries. So now you find yourself getting irritated. So now you're irritated with yourself for allowing this to happen. And you're irritated with other people for taking advantage of your time, your kindness, and those things that you're offering. So now you begin to avoid decision making. I know for me personally, that's what I know that I might be heading towards burnout, that I need to kind of reel it back in and set some boundaries and really think about what's realistic for me when I start avoiding decisions. And that could be a decision fatigue, because decision fatigue is a thing. You are starting to like not be too happy with this business, and you start to resent it because it's stressing you out. Hard time focusing, fatigue and exhaustion begin to set in. And this is where we start to see people having anxiety attacks, where you have a hard time going to sleep. You're going to sleep thinking about it. Maybe you're having some nightmares. Maybe you're waking up thinking about it and you get that tension. So this is a phase where people sometimes experience anxiety attacks. And then there's chronic stress, where it begins to become a little bit more serious. And this is the phase where it looks a lot like depression, because there's a lot of withdrawal, a lot of resentfulness and cynicism. And you're just beginning to isolate more and more, withdraw from people, lack of hobbies, loss of interest in things. So you're just starting to lose that enthusiasm. And then there's burnout, where you just have this it's almost like a dark place. And sometimes here people might have thoughts of suicide. You don't have to have a mental health diagnosis to have those thoughts of suicide. So this is where those feelings of emptiness, you might start to experience those physical symptoms we talked about earlier, with the headaches, maybe that cold that you just can't seem to get rid of, gastrointestinal symptoms where your stomach it doesn't stop hurting when you're thinking about going into that place or helping another person or just doing anything task related. We don't want to ignore that sign. That is your body telling you something. It's information that we need to do something. Something isn't right. We really want to listen to our bodies and our nervous systems. And then habitual burnout. So this is where you are just in a place of feeling burned out all the time. There might be, it's almost like, reminds me of major depression where people go through cycles of depression. There are times where they're okay, but all it takes is one trigger and you're back to that really chronic place of burnout where you're really sad and you just have this fatigue and this exhaustion and you just cannot pull yourself out of it. So you're just hypersensitive to a lot of things. All right. So those are the phases that happen in burnout. If any of these resonated with you, that's okay. It doesn't mean that you should quit your business tomorrow or, quit your leadership position. It just means that you've come to a crossroads where it's really time to reflect on your reason why. That's why I asked you to put that in there. And is that enough for you to push forward? And you might not know that answer today. That's why I talked about non-closure, expect non-closure, but it's a great place for us to start with reflection, for you to think about what are the reasons, what are some reasons that you might want to move forward, and what are some consequences of you continuing to move forward. So just some time to reflect on that and just breathe. That was a lot to take in, and that can be triggering for a lot of people, just to see that, just to kind of see themselves, you might feel exposed, put on Front Street. So with deep breathing, you can put one hand, your left hand on your heart, your right hand on your belly button. And this is a great way to do deep diaphragmatic breathing. So we get those long, full cleansing breaths versus those short kind of frantic breaths. And it's helpful to just inhale 2 times through your nose, making sure that your hand on your stomach pokes out further than your hand on your chest. So we'll inhale for 2, and then we'll slowly exhale for 4, blowing out the mouth. So ready and go. One more. Okay. So breathing is a great way to calm the reactive part of the brain. I highly recommend, if you're into breath work and you're comfortable with it and it doesn't make you uncomfortable, that's something that you can practice periodically throughout the day. Don't wait for the crisis to happen to just automatically start practicing breath work, because that alone could create an anxiety. You're like, oh my God, what did they say in that presentation? It's something that if you try it now, while I'm assuming that you're in a more balanced state, when you find yourself in a state of panic and you activate that muscle memory, the body keeps score, you're more likely to be able to bring yourself down a little quicker because you are used to practicing that. So that's something you want to practice when you're not in a state of panic. So you get pretty familiar and comfortable with it. All right. And this is another strategy that I like, just something to kind of help us get back into the more wise part or logical part of our brains, because running a business, it could just pull you in so many different directions that we can just feel escalated all the time. And sometimes just telling ourselves to stop and just pause for a moment is enough for us. It's enough to kind of calm our nervous system back down, bring us back to balance, and just pausing for that moment. But if that's not enough, you can just take that breath, kind of the way we just did, And just, just notice your breath in and out, noticing the rhythm of your breathing, and just being an observer of what's going on around you without any judgment. What thoughts are going through my head? What am I reacting to? What am I responding to? What sensations do I notice in my body right now? What's affecting me right now? And then pulling back and putting in some perspective. This will just help you to see it through a different lens and just not believe everything you think. Sometimes we have to challenge our distorted or, challenge those thoughts that are just not realistic. And just, what's another way that I can look at this? How can I look at this from a helicopter view? Is this going to be important 3 months from now? And then we want to practice what works and proceed. What can I do that aligns with my values? What's the best thing for me to do right now? So this is just a way to give ourselves some perspective when we're having a hard time, and that's stop with 2 P's. So how can you lead without being overwhelmed as a boss? I love acronyms just because they're very easy to to remember. So boss, I came up with boss because I think that's something easy for all of us to remember. And just so everybody knows, this is being recorded, and you'll have access to a copy of this. So the first one is boundaries. I'm sure we can all relate to that. We want to have some healthy boundaries because they really are the ultimate guide to not only healthy relationships with yourselves and others, but healthy business practice and successful businesses. So what are some tips that we can use to create some healthy boundaries? There are many, but these are the ones that stood out, and I think that you'll find helpful. Reclaiming your time and honoring your capacity. We know that time is an asset, and it can also be a liability if mismanaged. Sometimes we violate our own time. Think about the time we spend scrolling on social media, just mindless scrolling. And then we'll say we don't have time for things. Even if you spend 3 hours a day just mindlessly scrolling, that's 21 hours a week. So if you cut that in half, you begin to get some time back, and you begin to honor your own time. So that's how you can create those healthy boundaries with yourself. And just thinking about, do you know where most of your time is going throughout the day? Are you able to reflect on, yeah, I think I spend most of my time checking emails, answering the phone, on social media, on phone calls? Where is most of your time going? It doesn't matter what does matter, but it's okay if right now you're like, I think I waste a lot of time on social media, or, just making phone calls that I probably don't need to be making throughout the day. That's good because that's information. Now we have a baseline of, where we can get 5 hours of your time back. So you're not feeling burned out, because what happens is you're spending this time that maybe you can be building your business, working in the business, or what have you, is going to something else that has nothing to do with your business. So now you find yourself at the end of the day scrambling, trying to make up for that 3 hours that you lost. And that's why people get so burned out. So that's one way that we can reclaim our time. And I'll talk a little bit about a time audit in a second. And honoring your capacity, honoring your emotional capacity, just being able to recognize the capacity of emotional energy that you can take in. And this means that you have to know your limits and how can you honor them. For example, I still see clients in my practice, so I know how many clients I'm able to see in one day or in a week, just for my own well-being, and to make sure that I'm okay, to make sure that I'm giving the best level of care to them, and for energy to run my business and to commit to my family. So I know there are different parts of me that are expected in different parts of my life. So it's important for me to recognize my emotional capacity, and that's only something that you can answer. So what is your emotional capacity, and how do you honor that? And how do you know when it's being violated? right? So, just asking yourself, do you have the capacity to attend that event? And the reason why I keep using events as an example is because many of us, as leaders, as entrepreneurs, we're often asked, and we feel this obligation, to do these things, even if we don't have the capacity. So only you can recognize that capacity, to if you're able to volunteer or help, or how you're able to give your presence or your resources. And then the second one is just being able to practice tuning into your inner sense of yes and no. Are you saying yes because this is something that you want to do and is connected to your values? Or are you saying yes because you feel obligated, because this is something that, I have to do, I feel guilty, I'm going to look bad, what will people say about me? So only you can connect to what your inner sense of, yes and no is. And do you have to respond right away? Give yourself permission to take that pause, think about how this is going to affect your future self. Think about how this fits into your schedule. Will you find yourself, being overbooked and overcommitted? And then learning to tolerate the reactions of others. If you're someone who says yes all the time and has loose boundaries, the minute you start saying no and setting boundaries, people are not going to respond well because they're just not used to it. And what we know, we talk about things in our control and outside of our control. We cannot control the reactions of other people's. They are entitled to their opinion. They have permission to feel how they want to feel. So we cannot control that. All we have control over is just being able to tolerate it. And if there's someone they have respect for you, they respect your relationship, your friendship, or your professional relationship, then they're going to honor your stance on that. And if they're not able to do that once given some space, then maybe it's time to evaluate that relationship. And then creating that non-negotiable self-care activity. So this is that one thing that you're going to do for yourself every day, no matter what's going on in your life, even if you can just squeeze out 5 minutes of your life to commit to yourself. And this might mean, I'm going to make sure that I take an uninterrupted lunch every day without checking emails, responding to phone calls. I'm going to make sure I eat breakfast in the morning. I'm going to make sure I get a good night's sleep. I'm going to make sure I incorporate some type of movement. I want to journal a little bit more. I want to take more time off. What is that one non-negotiable self-care activity that you can begin to implement into your life more regularly? And those are just some examples of boundary setting. And in organization, decluttering. This morning, I was rushing around. It was just one of those days trying to get to an appointment, had something going on in my household. And I decided, well, I'm just going to go ahead and get online with my laptop right here. But everything around me was a mess. And I said, you know what? I just got to ask for an extra 5 minutes and declutter. Like, I need to organize my space because I could not think straight. So decluttering it's imperative in making sure that we're not getting exhausted and burning ourselves out. How can we create more mental space? What are some of those things that we've been avoiding that is just taking up so much space? It could be, I need to schedule that appointment. I need to return that phone call. I need to clear some physical space in my office. How can I begin to declutter? And in structured meetings, we love our meetings, don't we? I work for a lot of organizations, and we would have so many meetings. And sometimes, if we're being honest, they were not even necessary. So we really need to ask, as leaders, does this meeting really need to happen? And if it does, what is the purpose of the meeting? Let's create an agenda before we are having this meeting with our business partners, with our staff, with other people in the community. There's nothing like someone reaching out to you is like, oh, I'd like to set up, even if it's a Zoom call with you, or do you have a minute? we need structured meetings. What is the purpose? What is the agenda? How much time is this going to take? Because when you're running a business and you're in a leadership position, every second counts. Your second, your time is super valuable and super important. And so is the time of the people who you are leading and the people that you're working for. So just really making sure you have those agendas, and you get to decide on, if it happens, the length of time and the purpose. My partner and I, we meet pretty frequently, but we always have an agenda because we just cannot afford to waste our time or waste the time of other people. And then what can I quit today? And what I mean by that is, I know we have some people who, and I used to be one of those people, I would make those lengthy to-do lists like almost every day and just get so discouraged and frustrated because I didn't complete everything on this to-do list. But that's impossible. It's almost like I was setting myself up for failure every day by making these lists. So if you are someone who's doing that, or you are someone who has so much on your plate, what is the one thing that does not have to get done today, or the one thing that you can outsource to someone else, even if you're not in a place where you can afford to an assistant? Is there a volunteer? Is there an intern? Do you have someone in your family who's willing to help? What can you outsource or put on a shelf until the next day? One of the most invaluable and very practical lessons that I've learned while running these businesses is that everything is not going to get done today. I'm someone who likes to close every loop, and I had to just come to a place of acceptance that it's okay if everything doesn't get done. It can wait until tomorrow. So what can you quit today? And how can I accomplish more in less time with higher levels of energy? And we're going to talk about that in the next one with systems. Who, not how. I don't know if anybody ever read this book. It's great. I got it on Audible. I can't think of the author's name, but if you type in who, not how, it'll come in. I highly recommend it for anyone who's in a leadership position or running businesses. Just really talks about how many of us, especially those of us who are running businesses and working in our business as a technician, like with many of my colleagues who are therapists and run a practice, we're still seeing clients and we're running the business. So we're often in that state of, how can I get all of this done? How am I going to do this? How am I going to interview these people? How am I going to grow this business? When it's time to shift our thinking to, who can help me run this business? Who can help me get all of this done? Who can I help? Who can I outsource this to? Because if we want growth and we want to prevent burnout, it's about growing wide and, exponentially versus, linear. So who, not how. Who is going to help me with that? And I know that's hard for a lot of us because we try to do everything, but it's really hard to grow and it's hard to prevent burnout if you're steadily and constantly trying to figure out how you're going to do everything. And what systems can you put in place to decrease stress and burnout? I told you I would tell you about this time audit. So this time audit is something you could probably download a free app in Play Store, Apple, or even Google. It's just like an Excel sheet, and it has times in 15-minute to half-hour increments. And it's usually starting from either the time you wake up or the time you start actively working. So for me, when our coach had us do it, I started from the time I woke up, because what I learned, even though I wake up at some insane hour that I won't share with everyone, time can still be wasted. And I thought like, oh, well, I'm getting up early and most of the time I'm going to work out, so everybody's sleeping, I can get done. But you can still easily, waste time there to social media scrolling and just finding yourself engaging in just mindless activities. 3 hours goes really quickly. And before you know it, it's like 8 or 9 o'clock. So it was helpful to start with the time I woke up until the time I stopped working. And what I did, I did half-hour increments. I found that I spent way too much time like checking emails. And I'm like, well, what am I looking for in these emails? Like, I don't know why it was so important for me to constantly, like, almost like I was a guard dog. Like I needed to monitor these emails. So I was able to create this system around emails. And actually one of my colleagues who noticed that had shared with me about how he has this system of 1 to 4, I'm checking emails Monday through Friday, and that's it. And he even puts a notification on his email. Another system could be like some type of phone system, how you're answering a phone, how you are responding to people, how you're going to get back to people. This could be how you are going to pay your vendors, pay your customers, how you're going to pay yourself. So what systems in place? So just thinking about how your business is running right now and what areas in your business could use some improvement in systems. And there are a lot of free resources and coaches that can help you out with that. And this is, professionally and personally. So this doesn't just apply to your business. This applies to your personal life too. A household has to be run like a business too. So are there some systems in your home that need to be put in place? Like I know for us, we really try to have, a couple of days of the week that we really commit to getting things done around the household so that it runs smoothly during the week because both of us are working. So putting those systems in place, such as like laundry, who's going to the grocery store, are we ordering things in, who's folding the clothes, which neither of us like to do. So just putting those type of systems in place. So boundaries, organization, systems, and then last but certainly not least, and we're right on time, your self-care plan. So developing that self-care plan, it doesn't have to be a fancy thing, but most importantly, I would highly recommend, and I encourage you, I almost beg of you to pick a non-negotiable self-care activity that you can implement for the next 7 days. And again, that could be something along the lines of basic needs where you're making sure that you're fueling your body regularly, because if you're in a leadership position, you use a lot of mental energy. One of my personal trainers told me that we probably use our mental energy is probably similar to a physical workout. So it's important that we are fueling with food. So if that means making sure you're eating breakfast, lunch, dinner regularly, do you want to get some type of movement in a few times a week? What can you commit to for the next 7 days? Is it journaling? Is it reaching out to support? Just what can you really contribute to for the next 7 days? And just notice what that's like for you at the end of that 7 days, just committing to yourself and making yourself a priority. Because when you're running a business, you can often make that the priority, and you can make your team the priority, and you can make the community the priority. But at some point, you cannot leave yourself off that list. Really, you really got to be at the top of that list. All right, because like we talked about earlier, you can't serve from an empty well. So speaking of those wells, since we are at the end, if you're comfortable in sharing, please share with me where your well is now that we've gotten to the end of our presentation. Are you at a 9 or 10, or are you at a 7 or 8, so if we're looking at a scale from 0 to 10, where are you? So wow, I see people have improved from 2 to 5, 6. People want to incorporate organization. I'm just so happy to hear that people took something away from our time together. So I really love to hear that. I think I'm at a 7. That's great. And that's a great way to go into the rest of the week, because we're right at that hump day, because Wednesday is usually the day for people who are working Monday through Friday, usually begin to experience an energy dip where you begin to get exhausted. So this was a great day to have a workshop like this so people can kind of cruise into the last couple of days of their week. So I thank you all for participating and for joining in. And if you have any questions, I'll stick around for a couple minutes to answer any of your questions. But again, remember, it's not the load that breaks you, it's the way you carry it.